The triglyceride to HDL ratio is what you really want to know. And the reason is because you're looking at the bad guy, the triglyceride, and you're looking at the good guy, the HDL, and you're looking at them in comparison to each other with the ratios. You actually have to do a computation. And if you have a triglyceride to HDL ratio of about 1.5 or less, you'll probably live forever. If you have a triglyceride to HDL ratio of 2.5 or greater, you got a problem. Also, the thing to know is that these are race specific. So if you're an African American, your triglyceride to HDL ratio should actually be closer to 1.5, or below. So there's some racial differences in this. So I don't want to make a blanket statement on all of these. The point is that these different molecules are evolutions of each other in terms of how they get made, how they get processed by the liver, how they end up at the fat cell, what gets offloaded, and what recirculates back. And when you get a fasting lipid profile, you're getting basically a snapshot of where those are in relation to each other at any given moment. And so what you have to be able to do then is you have to be able to fold that into a narrative of what your lipids are doing at that moment. And of course, that's not what your doctor does. All your doctor does is look at the lab slip and look at the high or the low, the number.
Green or red check marks.
That's right. And so if your LDL is high, you need a statin. If your HDL is high, he says, don't worry about it, and doesn't even tell you about the rest of it. So, there's a lot to be learned from those numbers, but you can't compare them to any standard alongside it. What you have to do is you have to look at the interrelationships between each of them. And that's something likely your doctor does not know how to do because they were never taught to do it.
88% of American adults have at least one biomarker of metabolic dysfunction. The average person doesn't really know where they stand on the spectrum of metabolic health. We're often going to the doctor and hearing, your labs are normal, like nothing to worry about. We know in our gut that that's not good enough. Get the right labs, do the test at home, and know what is optimal.
What about for triglycerides that could say, just alone, like glancing at it, okay, this means I'm probably okay in terms of my small density LDL versus not?
I would say a triglyceride level of 100 or less, and you're fine. Those are good numbers. If they're higher than 100, then you need to take a little bit longer and do a little bit more work. The question is, what is that high triglyceride telling you? Well, remember, you have to compare it to your HDL because those are basically the different species, because the triglyceride goes to small dense LDL and the LDL goes to the HDL, after it's been offloaded. So they're telling you, so you're looking at the good versus the bad, and you're looking at them in a way that they're comparable. So it turns out that triglyceride to HDL ratio is the poor man's marker for insulin resistance. Insulin resistance. Now, let's talk about insulin and its role in all of this. Insulin is not the diabetes hormone. Yes, diabetics take shots of insulin. That's true. Yes, insulin lowers your blood glucose. That's true. The American Diabetes Association will tell you insulin is the diabetes hormone. That's not true. It is a blood glucose lowerer, but it does so much more. Really, what you need to think of insulin as is it's your energy storage hormone. Insulin takes whatever's in your blood that you're not burning right now and puts it into fat for storage. Now, it can put it into subcutaneous fat, which is kind of benign fat. I mean, it will grow your, dress size, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's dangerous. Or it can put it into visceral fat, in which case, you'll grow your belt size, and that is very dangerous, or it can put it in your liver fat, in which case you won't even see it in your dress size or your belt size, and it's extremely dangerous. So where that fat goes has everything to do with how dangerous it is. But insulin is the way it gets there. And insulin resistance is the phenomenon of insulin not working right because of the fat usually in your liver. So when your liver starts storing fat, your pancreas has to make more insulin to make the liver do its job. When you get liver fat, and it turns out 45% of Americans now have liver fat when they never had it before. When you get liver fat, your liver is not working right. When your liver is not working right, that's going to raise insulin levels all over the body because the pancreas has to tell the liver what to do. It has to make more insulin to make the liver do the right thing. Well, that extra insulin all over the body is what's going to cause all of the chronic metabolic diseases that we know. Because insulin is not just the diabetes hormone. It's not just lowering blood glucose. It's also causing cell proliferation in places it shouldn't, like your coronary arteries, or in your breast tissue, or in your prostate, or in your brain. Okay? And so, in fact, high insulin levels have been associated with virtually all chronic diseases and cancer and dementia. So insulin is good when it lowers your blood glucose and you're diabetic, and is bad for everything else. Insulin is a good news, bad news deal. And so you want your insulin to be as low as possible and still do the job. Well, the way to get your insulin to be as low as possible and still do the job is to have a liver that works. And if your liver doesn't work, you're screwed. So what makes your liver not work? Fat in the liver. That liver fat is the baddest guy in all of medicine. Right? And the question is, how did that fat accumulate in the liver to cause this problem? Answer, sugar. And how does that manifest in the lipid profile? With small, dense LDL. And where do you find that? You find that in your triglyceride to HDL ratio, even though the triglyceride to HDL ratio isn't even measuring LDL. So this is why this is so complicated, because in fact, to determine what your LDL is, you have to look at the other species. And most doctors don't understand this.
So these are the take home points that I think we've talked about. One, don't think about the total cholesterol number, kind of throw out that number. Total cholesterol is fairly meaningless. Then look at your LDL, and LDL alone, not very useful. And if it's elevated, that does not necessarily mean you immediately should jump on a statin. First thing to do is to look at your triglycerides and your HDL. Triglyceride to HDL ratio, which you can calculate on your iPhone calculator. Generally speaking, if this is over 2.5 to 1 in Caucasians or over 1.5 to 1 in African Americans, that means there's a problem. You want to keep it below those numbers. And pretty much ideally for everyone, less than 1.5 to 1, that's a good thing, but lower is better. With LDL, when you're looking at your triglycerides, if it's less than 100, that's a good thing. That's probably an indication that your small density LDL is not through, super high. So take a look at that number. With HDL, we want it to be high. Right now, I think it says above 40 on most reference ranges. It says keep it above 40 for men and above 50 for women.
It should be way higher than 40 if you can help it. I mean,
Right.
If you're down at the 40 level, you're not doing that well.
Right.
60 and above if you can get it there. But a lot of the problem with HDL is a lot of that is genetic.
Yeah.
And so, if you've got a family with, really good genetics.
But basically, if yours is 41 and your doctor's oh great, your HDL is normal, get it. We need to get it higher.
That's not that normal.
Next thing I'm hearing is sugar is driving the liver fat. Liver fat is what's making us insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is driving our dangerous small density LDL levels. We need to figure
That's
out how to get the liver fat down. And then my last thing is get a fasting insulin test. Ideally, it should be less than 6. Is that fair in terms of
absolutely fair. All things that your doctor doesn't know.